Good evening, everyone. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. And we're going to, I think, start with sustainability and talk about that and the roles that you've all got in that and your thoughts on that. And then towards the end, we'll just talk about your individually on your sailing careers, which in most cases or all cases are very impressive. But I'll go to you first, Will. A stellar record in sailing around the world, not only just in Australia, but you completed an honours degree in marine ecology at the James Cook University in North Queensland. You started work at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and you're currently on the committee or the Commission for World Sailing Sustainability. So where are you at now with that? What projects are you involved with and your thoughts on sustainability? It's a broad subject, I know, but just give us a bit of an overview.
Yeah, so when I came out of school, earning money from sailing wasn't something you could achieve. So I went to the Maritime College for a year, and then I went to James Cook up here in Townsville, where I studied marine ecology. I spent 20 years working on the Great Barrier Reef, which was, at the time, the best job in the world. So I've always been passionate about coral reef ecosystems, but I also was managing a long-term monitoring program on the Great Barrier Reef. So we had the longest continuous data set that existed on the reef. And so during that work, I was able to notice changes in the reef systems that became concerning. So the first thing is that reefs have a tremendous capacity to recover. So you can have a reef that goes down to 5% coral cover, and in 10 years on the Great Barrier Reef, it can come back to nearly 80%. And so for the first 10 years, we noticed these changes and things beginning to recover. So a cyclone would come through and things would manage to recover. But then in more recent times, the problem with the increasing water temperature, for instance, is that is happening over such a large scale that where previously a cyclone could come through and maybe 5 reefs were damaged, when the water has warmed, you were getting hundreds of reefs that were affected. And so the whole issue of climate and the changing water temperatures has had a big impact on the reef. So 20 years ago, we were talking about this, and it's just starting to come to public attention. So that's the background as to why I have a strong interest in sustainability. And then in 2017, I was asked to be the sailors' representative on a new sustainability commission that was set up by World Sailing. And the idea was that we have this great, clean, green sport. It's a tremendous platform where we get out in the environment, but we needed to make sure that we could maintain our sport and we could in fact grow the sport. And so the Sustainability Commission grew out of that. And I guess the first thing to say is that sustainability in the context of world sailing is not just about the environment and making sure, climate emissions and reducing plastic. Sustainability is about the health of the sport and trying to make sure that we have growth in the sport, we have a wider socio-demographic, that we do a better job of gender balance. And it's about making sure that our sport is accessible to all. So we don't just end up with a bunch of old white blokes that are getting older and older sitting at the bar, that the sport has a growth trajectory and that we're open to all. So I guess that's a general introduction as to how I got into the sustainability.
Okay. Well, Ali, I'll come to you next. You've got an education in marine environmental science, and you're currently working for Green Shoot Pacific. Just tell us a bit about that and how that all evolved for you.
Again, very much like Will, as you said, it's been sort of 20 years sort of working within the industry. Originally marine biology, always been a bit of a water baby along with sailing, but and then mapping the ocean colour data through as part of my postgrad at Southampton Uni, working on El Nino and La Nina and working on climate change, which obviously worked into affecting on the reefs. So it's sort of interlinked on that, and sort of been trying to work for quite a long time, trying to get people to understand a bit more about the small changes they can make to sort of really make quite a, collaboratively make a big change to the world. So Green Shoot Pacific is with Megan Jones, who people may know, who works with Anne Cecile Turner at the Volvo Ocean Race, as it's known now, or as the Ocean Race as it's known now. And they've been doing a fantastic job getting out there to the public to educate people about, again, behaviour change and small things they can do in sustainability, both in the sport itself, as Will's trying to say, but also about sort of waste and energy. And so we work on events trying to get them to embed sustainability more on the waste and the energy side as business as usual. It shouldn't really be a sort of standalone sort of as part of their ops. It should just be the social norm. And that's what we've been working on, is to try and not make it a thing. It should just be, a normal best practice. And as Will and I were chatting off camera earlier, nowadays is actually becoming a sort of a bit of a no-brainer really on the cost saving side of fronts. So I also work with local governments on trying to get them to also embed sustainability as in their basic operations, and a number of other charity groups as well doing the same thing, just trying to educate the public that it's quite simple, small changes which can really make a significant difference.
It's a massive challenge, but are you making headway? You're going in the right direction?
Yeah, we're seeing, especially in recent years, I think we've had some big wins really with our, Sir David Attenborough, one of the loves of my heart. But with the Blue Planet, he's been great at actually getting the message out there. I've definitely, did feel like I was banging my head a bit against a brick wall for quite a few years, and then outside of sort of my industry. And then all of a sudden, sort of say 4 or 5 years ago, it's really become a bit of a highlight. And then here in Australia, we've also had, I can't think of his name, but we've also had the environmental program here on the ABC, which has really made a big change. I think a lot of people have been following that to
it was a show I saw, Will, you might have seen it, or you all might have seen it, on the East Coast Currents, on the ABC.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Very well done.
Good. Yeah, very
good. The Ocean Odyssey.
Mm.
Yes.
I haven't got to see it yet.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Well, Jade, to you in sunny Melbourne, how are you going down there? Are you involved intimately with any projects, or is it just a general overview for you of sustainability?
Yeah, so I currently work in the marine industry, and we are constantly trying to push ourselves with initiatives and changes to be as sustainable as we can in this industry, because we're all here for the love of the ocean, and it is our playground as well as our livelihoods. The recent campaign with Ocean Respect Racing and 11th Hour is really where I was able to get quite involved with the sustainability topic, and start to raise awareness amongst sailors. Sorry about that. So really, it became a topic, and we learned a lot through that campaign, and
that specifically was with 2 years ago in the Hobart race, wasn't it, with Stacey and the girls on Wild Oats 10, which was...
Yeah, that's right. So Ocean Respect Racing was a team that was created by Stacey Jackson, and it was it was a team put together for the 2018 Sydney to Hobart. It was the first all-professional female team to compete in the Sydney to Hobart, and we were, through the generosity of the Oatley family and a partnership with 11th Hour Racing, we used Ocean Respect Racing as a platform to raise awareness for sustainability.
You did very well. You nearly won the race outright. You were second overall, and you beat Will and all the rock stars on Ichiban. So that was a pretty good effort. Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. So we were
second overall to the sister ship, which was alive, Ryker Q66. We had a great race. The conditions suited our boat, but we had a team that really we didn't actually get to do that much sailing together as a team prior to the race. So we had a lot of experience on board. That included collectively about 70 Sydney to Hobart races and 20 laps of the planet. So all of that experience was, really put to the test, and yeah, we had a great result. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, to the layman, sustainability and cleaning up the oceans is sort of plastic in the oceans and that sort of thing. But Will, you've raced around the planet a number of times, I think 4 or 5 Volvo races. What did you see that, was really staggering to you in the waters of the oceans? Because I know is there an area in the Northern Pacific that's like a dumping yard that all the currents meet there, and it's just absolutely miles and square miles of plastic just floating around?
Yep, there is. But for us on the course we took, the most dramatic view of that stuff was in the Straits of Malacca between Indonesia and Malaysia, where there was acres of stuff floating, small houses, 44-gallon drums. We were having to stop, put someone in the water every 15 minutes to clear the foils. It was that disgusting after the recent rains. Now, for years, I guess I thought of plastic as being an unsightly thing, but it wasn't as bad as some of the other things that were going on. But now what we know is that the plastics are breaking down into then becoming microplastics. Then they're being ingested by the birds and the fish. So even on Lord Howe Island, as you would have seen in that program that you were talking about, Peter, the birds are often full of plastic. And then this is making its way into the food chain, and then we're ingesting the plastics. And the studies that they've done are showing us that they have real impacts on animals' breeding rates and mortality rates. And so it's become an all-encompassing problem that we in the world have to address. So it's not just how unsightly it looks; it actually is a major health problem as well.
Is it a winning battle or a losing battle?
Well, the biggest problem, if we're being honest about it, is the growth in human population. And when you're in some of these countries where you're actually just trying to stay alive, you haven't really got time to be told that perhaps you shouldn't be throwing your plastic on the ground. So in a country like Australia, we have the ability to make real change, but it really is a big problem of tackling things at a much deeper level. If you go back 50 years into the Pacific, all the building materials that the guys were making the houses out of were all essentially recyclable. If you go to the Pacific now, the amount of waste that is non-recyclable is a huge problem. And so we have to start thinking about ways of producing products that the people are then going to buy that will help to reduce the plastic impacts. And that is happening.
Ali, I'll bring you in here, but I just, on that, Will, I was about 12 months ago, or just under, we're up cruising in the islands a bit north of Bali with friends on their big yacht. And we went ashore a couple of times in little villages, and, the foreshore, 10 metres from the shore was just littered with plastic and rubbish. You couldn't believe it. Yet the waters were quite pristine out in where we went skin diving or diving, but the plastic in these villages, and it's a third world country really, and we took some little toys and things for the villagers and some lollies, and they just eat the lollies, just throw everything on the floor. Ali, how do we educate them? It's a massive problem, and we were just staggered. We just looked at it and couldn't believe the rubbish that was just in little villages collected on the foreshores.
Well, as Will said, like 50 years ago, we weren't really using plastics. We were using alternative materials, especially in the third world countries. Even really recently, like when you bars in Thailand or Bali, a lot of them are still, providing you food on a leaf platter. They weren't doing it on plastics. So this reliance on plastics, for example, is quite a recent thing, but it's only really come to light that we've realised that every piece of plastic, pretty much, that we've ever produced is still around in some form. As you said, it's breaking up into smaller and smaller fragments, and now to the point where it's, microplastics, as we talk about it. If people don't know what a microplastic is, what we're talking about is something that's, it'll be a plastic smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. And microplastics are what we deem something less than 5 millimeters in diameter, so a centimeter in diameter, and less than that. So now we're talking about even less than 1 mil. The small, actually a raindrop, like absorbed up into the clouds and then redistributed out into our waterways. So even if you think you're drinking like filtered, mineral water, Evian mineral water in still a single-use plastic bottle, you'll actually find that you're now also ingesting plastic. And I think the BBC said not that long ago that I think we're ingesting something like a credit card's worth of plastic now, daily. So it's an endemic problem that we need to change. But is it a third world problem? Well, again, it's really the first world countries, the UN countries, that have really been sort of pushing that demand for plastics. And I think we need to be the ones that really help drive the alternative materials to or closed loop systems as such. I don't know what you were like. I actually didn't grow up, obviously, with my voice in this country, but the milkman used to sort of deliver our milk, and we used to have all the sodas and stuff delivered in glass bottles that then used to be taken away. So there's lots of solutions that are kind of out there, but I guess it's the price point of where that becomes financially viable.
Yeah.
This is the environment.
Jade, with Ocean Respect, they've had a lot of success, haven't they? They've got some great results from their work. Just give us a bit of an idea of what they've achieved over the years.
Yeah, so as a team, it was really, as I said, raising awareness about sustainability, but really leading by example. So throughout the campaign, we avoided all single-use plastic in terms of water bottles, so taking our own reusable bottles. And throughout the short campaign, we avoided 800 single-use bottles. We also refused the single-use coffee cup. So we had a reusable coffee cup, and when you forgot your reusable coffee cup, because we've all done it, would take the time to sit down and have a coffee. And they're little things that, small changes that really initiate long-term habits. And not just that, we also did a lot of beach cleans where we collected over 35 kilos of rubbish. We also sort of stuck to a meat-free Monday routine where we were able to, calculate the amount of water and CO2 emissions and things that we saved throughout the campaign as well. So, but yeah, as I said, just leading by example and really trying to show that as sailors, you can do your sport, go out there and not have that single-use plastic impact on the planet. If we can all encompass those small changes and create long-term habits, it will make a really big difference. They're things that we can learn, we can create long-term habits, we can share with our friends, and the network just grows from there, becomes a better place for us all.
Now, Will, we were talking a bit earlier, and Boxing Day at the CYC, you see everyone great excitement loading the things for gear and equipment and food and water and that. And you see trolley loads of water going down the dock in plastic bottles. I mean, boats just fill up with the plastic bottles. Tell us what you're doing on Ichiban. I know a lot of boats, not a lot of boats, but some boats are doing regarding water bottles.
Yeah, so we just have a water tank down below. On some of the boats, we've got a water maker, so we're able to produce the water that then goes into the tank. Before the start, we put some ice into that tank, and then we just have a little switch on deck, and we have a little tap, and we just flick the switch, or there's a manual pump there, and we fill our own water bottles. And so everyone has a bottle, it's numbered, so we reduce sickness as well. But that way, you know that you've had that water bottle, you drink it, you know how many times a day how much water you need to drink, and we're able to continue to fill that tank down below as we go along. And so it's a much cheaper way of doing it. It's well filtered, and you don't end up with 10 plastic bottles half drunk sitting around in all the rope lockers on the boat. And if someone jumps on board with the flu, you don't give everyone the flu.
Numbering the water bottles is very key, isn't it? To make sure you don't get someone else drinking yours.
Yeah, but it's a practical thing. At Hamilton Island, they used to hand out pallets of water bottles till a few people pointed out this probably wasn't the best idea. So now they hand out, say 15 water bottles for a team of 15 that they get to use for the week. And then people have set up systems on the dock where the water's getting filtered. Doesn't always taste fantastic in some of these places. So you can plug the tap into a filtration system, and out the end comes beautifully filtered water. And so it's cheaper, and it's a more efficient way of making sure that you've got the water in the right place on the boat, centrally down low, rather than water bottles stashed all over the place.
How does that work on weight? Like,
in things like the ocean race, you have to carry a certain amount of emergency water, and then once you've done that, you produce the water that you need each day. So in the long transocean races, that's how it works. So there's enough water in an emergency that has to be there and is there at the end, and it's in a sealed container. But otherwise, you produce it as you require.
Around the world boats, you've got water makers.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to get back to the reef, the barrier reef. I mean, you obviously keep a close interest on that. How's the reef's health at the moment, if I could put it that way?
It's probably in as worst state as I've seen over the 30 years that I've been looking at. I worked at the Australian Institute of Marine Science for about 15 years. And for about 13 of those 15 years, I was the guy that said, the reef's fine. It keeps recovering. Yes, we have crown of thorns starfish. Yes, we have cyclones. Yes, we have freshwater runoff. And so you had all these different effects. But overall, the reef was, because there's so many reefs, in fact, there's 2,500 reefs on the Great Barrier Reef, it has a tremendous capacity to recover. The problem is that the climate changing at the rate that it's changing is not allowing the reefs to recover, and it's happening at a scale that it affects more than just a few reefs. It can affect hundreds of reefs at a time. So it's people go, yes, of course there's climate change. The climate's always been changing, and so you've got reefs in the Red Sea that are used to living in very high water temperatures. You've got reefs in Coffs Harbour that are used to living in colder water temperatures, and so coral reefs can adapt to the climate that they're in, but they're unable to adapt at the speed at which the water temperatures are changing. So that is the biggest threat. And the coral reefs are very much like the canary in the coal mine for us at the moment. There's all these effects happening, and they're all happening at the same time. And so it is under increasing threat.
Yeah. I was just reading a report the other day that said that also with plastic ingestion, because obviously they're not discriminatory against on the microplastics, is actually allowing them to be more vulnerable to the disease as well. So even with the coral bleaching, then they're also then more exposed to these diseases.
Yeah, I have to say that it has a tremendous capacity to recover, and we can make real change that has a tremendous difference. And when one of the things that I look to when I'm trying to give people examples is that not that long ago we had a major problem with CFCs, the fluorocarbons in the fridges and everything, and this was a global problem that was resulting in real issues for the world. And we worked together as a globe, and now the CFCs have virtually been eradicated from all of the products where they were. We came up with a different gas that is now in all the fridges and things, and this was tackled at a global level. And it was, as Ali said, it was the well-developed countries with the money and the capacity to make change that influenced this, and then drove the requirements such that the manufacturers changed what they were producing. And so we have a real capacity, if we work together, to actually make real change. And the bit that we can do as individuals is to choose how we purchase and what we do, because people follow the money.
Mm. Well, just getting back to world sailing, I mean, you spreading the tentacles far and wide to try and get everyone on side. I mean, it must be a huge job, that, is it, to try and get every regatta?
Yeah, so there's a sustainability agenda which was set for 2030, and it had six key areas, and the sorts of areas that we were working in, and I'll just refer to some notes to make sure I don't miss things. But the first was technical standards. Now, World Sailing has direct control over their events, but not over, say, the CYC events. But so, for instance, any new class bids for the 2028 Olympics have to demonstrate that 90% of the boats that they build are able to be recyclable by weight. And so that's a concrete example of driving the industry. You want to have your boat to be an Olympic class, you need to be able to demonstrate that the thing is recyclable. Another example more relevant to the CYC is that by 2022, new boats that are built after then will need to demonstrate that they can produce 20% of their power by renewable sources. And so what this is doing is driving the boat manufacturers in category O, 1 and 2 of the safety regulations, that they're able to produce the power in another way. Now, the way in which hopefully we can drive this is by, and my suggestion is for some of these things, if in the rules you were told, well, if you've got 20% of a renewable power source, we require you to carry a little less fuel than you otherwise would. And then it becomes a no-brainer, and everyone goes, well, we need to make this performance change, so we're going to try to develop a system that enables us to produce the power. And the other thing that happens, of course, in the like the Sydney to Hobart race, is that we are so reliant on batteries. Every boat, even the boats that don't have cannon keels. If you can't radio in at Green Cape, then you are essentially stuffed in the Sydney to Hobart race. And if you have a renewable power source that's going to enable you to keep the batteries charged, then it's just another one of those extra safety margins that can enable you to finish the race. So that's another example of where World Sailing is trying to drive changes in behaviour. Under the events area, we were looking at making sure that all the official boats are not reliant on fossil fuels alone. So that's an area where World Sailing can say, in the Olympics, we're going to make sure that our coach boats are not all using fossil fuels. And so already that's driven the production of an electric battery charged coach boat. We also, everyone bemoans the number of coach boats that you see at all these events. World Sailing is able to mandate for their Olympic events that at least 50%, there's a 50% reduction in the boats that are using fossil fuels at the Olympics by, I think it's going to be 28, the 28 games. And so these are changes that are trying to drive changes in industry and signal where the sport is hopefully going. With the events, World Sailing specified that if you want to hold an event, you need to demonstrate that you're not using single-use plastics. You also need to demonstrate that the water quality in which you wish to hold the event that the sailors are in needs to be of a certain standard. Now, and that's another way of getting cities to clean up the environment so that they can host these events that are very helpful for them generating income. So there's lots of small changes that we're looking. We're encouraging venues like the CYC to develop a more sustainable venue, to provide it, to make sure that it's more accessible to all people of all abilities and backgrounds. And the CYC is doing a really good job in those areas.
You're getting a good buy-in from around the world for everything you're proposing to do?
It's slow, and there's plenty of issues at the moment with world sailing. In the Maslow hierarchy of needs tree, at the moment, with the lack of the Olympics, the money is a massive issue. So people are concentrating on trying to make sure that world sailing stays afloat at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
But if we took that out of the equation, I think that we are seeing real change. And sailing is one of the sports that is leading the way in things like gender balance across the events. And the IOC puts up sailing as one of the golden childs in terms of really working to both the IOC and the UN development goals on sustainability and trying to get more balance. One of the things that's coming up in world sailing is that the para world championships will have to be co-located with the other world sailing championships. And so you saw the hoo-ha this week with the US Open in the tennis when they said, oh, we're not going to have the wheelchair attendees, and that caused a massive blow up. So sailing is leading in many of these areas of sport around the world.
Right. Well, I'll come to you, Ali, and then I'll come to you, Jade, in a second. But Ali, first, you're part of the CYC's sustainability working group, and already we've seen these. Help me, they're like baskets around the marina that has got a flowing.
Sea bins.
Thanks, Will. That's the word I was looking for. So what's the committee doing as far as the CYC are concerned? I mean, that's one thing you've done. It's an ongoing thing. So what else is planned?
So they've already got solar panels. So that's another one for energy saving. Operationally, they've been looking to reduce the amount of paper that's getting printed. So I think now most people get their SIs and their ORs, notices of races, electronically. They are available if you request, but they're trying to reduce sort of printed paper, which is fantastic. Again, they're working with the food and beverage, trying to sort of promote reusable cups as far as coffee goes, and they've got their own water bottles, reusable water bottles that they're promoting, and we've got the filtered water tap now at the bar for people to fill up their water bottles, which is fantastic. So those are the initiatives, and then obviously, so those are the ones that are actually already sort of in place, and we just need to keep helping members be aware of what they can do. And then the sea bins is a recent installation. That's through the local council there. They were able to install 6 sea bins, I believe. And I was just chatting actually a couple of days ago, we should start trying to analyse that data to be able to let people know like what we're actually finding in our waterways, because depending on where you are and the influences around, you sort of do find different types of rubbish in the water. And what people might not realise as well is that not only do you have the plastics and the litter, but a lot of toxins are actually associated with those litter items as well. So it's important to understand what's going on there. So yeah, the sea bins, if you go down to the dock, you'll be able to see them pumping away, and sort of, I mean, there's a lot of organic matter in there as well, but they are doing a fantastic job at capturing a lot of the waste garbage.
Jade, I'll come to you now. I want to talk specifically water bottles and what's coming up. You're not going to have too much trouble with just 2 water bottles, because you're planning to enter the short-handed division for this year's Rolex Sydney Hobart race, which is the 2-handed division, for the first time ever in the Hobart race. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So first year that the Sydney Hobart will allow two-handed entrance. So my sailing partner Barney Walker and I have put our hands up to compete in this year's Sydney Hobart two-handed in a 33-foot boat. It's going to be exciting. It's our intention to do this race, and we know that there are quite a few other teams entering in that short-handed division, and it's
So have you had much experience with short-handed sailing?
No, I haven't had much experience short-handed sailing, so have done quite a bit of cruising and things with family short-handed, and a little bit of the local racing. There's quite a bit of two-handed racing down here in Melbourne. It's Barney and I have been working pretty hard, both on and off the water, to ensure that we are fully prepared to go to Hobart two-handed. We are sailing now, and we'll be doing quite a bit of training come from about August, September, which is when we'll actually get our Sydney Hobart boat will arrive here in Melbourne, and we'll be training pretty hard from then on. So, there's a lot of systems and things that we're learning from the guys who are doing a lot of this sort of stuff overseas, especially out of France and the UK, in the same style of boats. So, we can sort of learn a lot of lessons from what they're already doing and the lessons they've already learnt. So, gives us a bit of a head start.
Yeah, massive. What? I'm very interested to know what training Barney's doing off the water.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah. So actually, Barney's looking really good, and he's in the gym.
Right.
And so fitness is going to be a really big thing, especially being really race fit, and just ensuring that we're sort of it's not going to be a 2-day race for us, which is what both of us have sort of been used to over the last few years. It's going to be a 3.5 to 4, maybe even 4.5, depending on the weather. Hopefully not, but day race for us. So just ensuring that we're at our fittest and our strongest. So yeah, there's a bit of gym time, and Barney's in there, and he's looking really fit. So.
Well, you've got a great man there in Barney. I mean, he's got a terrific record in the Sydney Hobart race. He's won it 3 times and line honours a couple of times, and one of the best. But you've done 9 Sydney Hobart races, and you've been second overall twice.
Yeah. So bridesmaid twice. So it's on there. It's on the list. It's a race that I love. I've gone with Barney 3 times before. So it's definitely one on the list that is up there to win, and who knows, it could be this year. We saw a two-handed team take out the transatlantic this year, so overall, so you just never know.
Yeah, well, it's massive in Europe, especially the French. I mean, they virtually pioneered it, but of course the Fastnet races had the two-handed division for a number of years, and a mate of mine, he won it, I think in 2015, won it overall. So, it's not beyond possibility that you could win it. But I think when I checked with the CYC last week, I think they've got at least about 10 or 12 boats entered in the short-handed division already. So that's a great sign. So you're going to have plenty of competition, which is good.
Yeah, and a lot of those boats are all around the similar size, sort of this 33, 34 foot, up to 36 foot. So it's going to be a great little race within a race. So
terrific.
It should be good. And
Barney going to the.
It'll be easy to social distance on the boat at least.
You'll only need 2 water bottles. That's the main thing. But Ali, you're an active sailor. You sail with Victoire. Yeah. How's that? How did that?
Sorry,
how did that come about to get to sail with Daryl and the boys?
I got sort of taken under their wing when I first actually came to Australia through a friend of a friend, Sammy Evans. She introduced me to the boat, and they were looking for a bowman. I thought I'd retire when I got to Australia, but no. So I I became their bowman when it was the Beneteau. And then, yeah, we had a fantastic run. I think at one point Audi was sponsoring all the events, and I think we were all going around driving all the cars, and yeah, it was brilliant. Well done, Victoire. And yeah, we've sort of gone for greater and bigger things now. Obviously, she's at that, the Fast 40, which you can see in the background, is not an offshore boat, so we're not doing all of the Blue Water series really. But yeah, it's great, and we're so glad to be back out on the water again after our little stint.
Yeah, the CYC winter races are well underway, and they've got over 100 boats racing each Sunday, which is fantastic.
Great.
But Will, from someone that started Sabos at the age of 7, you've come a long way, I must say. I mean, a fantastic record you've got, and as a navigator. But you did a skipper job on that BT Global Challenge Round the World race. That's right, isn't it? Did you do? I
did. I saw that as my ticket to transition from marine science into full-time professional sailing. So essentially, I managed to convince the Australian Institute of Marine Science that I could either go and do an MBA, or I could go and race around the world with a bunch of amateurs, and that would be my MBA. And they bought that. So then I went around the world as a skipper, but also as the navigator. So worked with clouds the whole way around the world. And so by the end of that race, I was able to then say, yes, I'm a navigator, but I've also raced around the world as a navigator. And that was really how I began the transition into full-time sailing.
For those that don't know, just tell us about that BT Challenge, what it involves and the crew, etc.
Yeah, so it's no longer in existence, but unlike the Clipper race, it was a bit more of a competitive race where you have largely the same crew for the entire way around the world. And it was set up by Che Blythe, and the key selling point was that it was the toughest race around the world because it went backwards. And so it went against the prevailing winds and currents. And so that's what Che Blythe had done by himself. As a tough marine. And so we had essentially the cruise is almost done by raffle. And at the London Boat Show on March the 10th, I was given basically a folio and said, this is your crew. And then on September the 10th, we left and raced around the world. And so there was, in that crew, there was 1 or 2 people that were potential yachtmaster material, and so I was able to pick one of them to be my first mate in the event that something happened to me. And off we set around the world. We had 2 people that would change every leg, and we were sponsored by Compact Computers, and we went from Southampton across to Boston. Then we went down to Buenos Aires. Then from Buenos Aires, which was the interesting one, we went down around Cape Horn and upwind to Wellington in New Zealand. Then to Sydney, then upwind to Cape Town, and then up back to Europe. And so every other time I've gone around the world, I've gone the right way, and I still look backwards behind me and go, I wonder just how mad I was. So...
But the crews, I mean, could the crews sail? I mean, obviously you could sail, and your mate might have been able to sail, or your watch captain. But were the rest of the crews sailors, or there's
a number of them were sailors, and a number of them had never sailed before. But the challenge business trained them in being safe and basic skill sets. And so by the start, we had, much like you do on any crew, we had a list of everyone had particular jobs, and we had a run sheet. And so every time we did a job, this was how we did it. And the same people did the same jobs. And I would say that they didn't need me by the end of the race, which was the goal. And the jobs were perfect. The professionalism was equal to any race team that I've ever been involved with. The difference was that the skill sets of helming and trimming were on the whole not at the same level that you see in the boats that we race in now. But the attention to detail is was incredible. And these people had been successful in business and in life, and they put their mind to this. And so we had a fair percentage of the crew, maybe 30% off the top of my head were female. And then the next time I raced around the world, we had females as well, and the non-stop multi-hull around the world. So a large percentage of my sailing has been with not quite gender balanced crews, but certainly with women. And my experience, our best main sheet trimmer in the BT Global Challenge was a grandmother who would just hold on to that main sheet and trim it with a dedication and a concentration that you rarely see in a bloke.
Absolutely amazing. But the selection process to get those people to go on the boats, that must have been pretty rigorous to make sure that those people would fit in and go the distance.
Yeah, well, a lot of that came down to the skippers having been given the people, figuring out how to mould them into a team.
Yeah.
And we only actually, I think we probably had them all told for maybe 20 days before the start, because of course they all still had jobs raising money to pay to do it. And it was about £20,000 back in 2000. So it was a huge amount of money that they had to come up with.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, Jade, talking about mixed crews, I guess is your long-term goal, perhaps you and Barney's, for the Olympics in 2024, because they've got this mixed class of ocean racing for the games. Is that a goal, a long-term goal for you?
Yeah, so that's where the idea originally stemmed from. So when the discipline was announced that it was in for Paris 2024, Barney approached me and asked me whether I was interested in trying to really go for this. So of course I jumped at the chance. It's been a long-term dream of mine. I actually never thought I'd get the chance after I came out of 29ers and dinghies, and to actually be in a position where we could have a chance of going for this is pretty exciting. So we've partnered together to go for this, and as part of that we've got a series of goals to tick along the way, and the first one is the Hobart that we're focusing on at the moment.
Yeah. And do you know of many other teams? I mean, they've got to be a mixed team, that's the rules, isn't it, a female and male, but do you know any other teams that are looking forward to doing this as a part of the program to work up to the Olympics?
Yeah. So there are other Australian teams that we're aware of, and also I'm connected with a few international teams, some that I've sailed with, some of the girls from the campaign that were part of the Ocean Respect Racing campaign. So it's pretty great. But there seems to be quite a bit of interest from some amazing sailors worldwide. It's a wonderful discipline to have been adopted into the Olympics, and it's going to be a really exciting one.
Have they decided on a class of boat yet? Has that been decided or not?
No. So the boat actually won't be announced until 6 months prior to the games. They don't want it to be an arms race. However, an equipment list will be published at the end of the year, and there is a draft equipment list that's become available through World Sailing. We're basically looking at a 30 to 34 foot monohull that will be non-foiling and will be of a modern design. So there's been a few designs submitted by manufacturers worldwide, and the boat that will be sailing to Hobart this year is one of those favoured designs for the Olympics. So it's important that we, obviously ensure that a lot of our training is on a potential design for the Olympics, so that we've got a little bit of a head start.
Yeah, great. Ali, any thoughts of doing the two-handed Rolex Sydney Hobart race?
No. I'm a social creature, and like to. I love offshores, but yeah, I like that banter that you get on the rail. and with two-handed racing. It's pretty much a high five. It's just of going, swapping shifts, and I have a utmost respect for the people that can do it, like yourself, Jade. But but for the people that know me, I could struggle.
Well, I'll come to you now. I want to talk about, you've 19 Sydney Hobart races. You've had 2 outright wins and a line honours. But I want to talk about last year, 2019, when you navigated Wizard to win the Fastnet race overall. You navigated Ichiban to win the Rolex Sydney Hobart race overall. And you won the Rolex Garagula race in 2019. I mean, a stellar year, as I said earlier. Hard to beat that, really.
Yeah, it's good to be lucky.
How about that?
It was a ridiculous year, one that'll probably never be repeated. But I'm lucky enough to sail with some extremely good teams around the world, and with owners that are prepared to put the resources in to make sure that we have the platform that we can achieve this stuff with. And so Wizard is an incredible boat. It's the Volvo 70 that was Group Armour, and we've had a lot of success with her over the last few years. Everyone's aware of Ichiban here. And then Kaila, a Maxi 72, largely crewed by Australians, led by the famous JH, who put the team together, and that was a fantastic program.
Yeah. So this year, presumably you're on Ichiban for the Rolex Sydney Hobart race?
Yeah, so I've done 7 Hobarts with Matt, so of the 19. So our plan is to focus on the truncated Blue Water series and the Sydney Hobart, and see how we go. It's tricky because we're all a bit rusty, but hopefully the Blue Water series will help sort that out.
Yeah. Well, looking at your career with round the world races, Hobart's, Fastnet, one highlight. What's been the highlight for you?
Well, domestically, it's pretty hard to go past the Sydney Hobart. It was a tremendous thrill to get the outright record for conventionally ballasted boats in 17, but last year's race was a much trickier race for a navigator, and so that was particularly good. And then internationally, the Fastnet is a very difficult race to win, and both last year's Hobart race and the Fastnet race were really tricky weather-wise, and so that's quietly satisfying when things work out okay, and you basically go away from the weather files and do what you think is happening rather than what the models are predicting.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're just getting towards the end, but there's a couple of questions. I see, Will, you've answered a couple, but Jade, there's one here for you, and I'll just pause while I find it. Jade, you spoke of doing some beach cleaning. Where did you do it? In light of what Ali has just said, what did you and the team find?
Yeah, so there was 2 beach cleans, and one was in a Sydney Harbour beach where 15 kilos of rubbish was collected in a short space of 1 hour. The other beach clean was actually up in Moreton Bay, where some of our team attended and joined with a team up there to collect 1,853 kilos of rubbish. From that, there was broken glass, pieces of plastic, single-use water bottles, polystyrene, flip-flops, shoes, and including 26 tyres as well. So there's actually a list of what was found with details on that on the sustainability report on the Ocean Respect Racing website that you can go in and have a look at. But one of the other great things that 11th Hour did at the time of our campaign was they actually gave a grant to Clean Up Australia, and that grant was $10,000, which was absolutely fantastic. And as part of that, the grant was activated in basically 3 steps. One was the beach cleanup. The other one was recycling bags that were then given to all the yachts in the Sydney Hobart Race Pack to encourage splitting of their rubbish and collecting their recyclables on board. So at the end of their race, they were able to recycle some of their waste, which hadn't been done in the past. The third part of that grant was a call to action for spectators who were watching the start of the Sydney Hobart, basically to take home their rubbish and stop and collect any rubbish that they might have found along the way. So it was a fantastic grant, and another great organisation, Clean Up Australia.
Yeah. There's a question here to all panellists. I'm interested in what influence club and race organisers, etc., can impose to limit the use of stickers on the boats. These stickers flake off straight into the ocean. Seems a few easy wins we can implement to make big changes.
Yeah.
So I presume they're talking about the bow stickers that we see at Hobart Start and things. Ali, any thoughts on that?
There are some organisations that are looking at alternatives, like as in alternative materials, than to a simple sort of PVC type sticker. But I think 3M are looking at one that's sort of durable enough to be able to, like a paper-based one, which is durable for a regatta, like 2-3 days, and then if it did fall in, it would just break up. Grapefruit Graphics were also looking at one that I knew about, but I mean, to be honest, the best solution at the moment is just not to really have a bow sticker, because yes, as you say, they do fall off a lot.
Yeah, and the Fastnet, for instance, from memory, did not have a bow sticker, and so the rules were changed, and you had to fly the Rolex flag, a big Rolex flag, from the starboard shrouds as you were going around the rock and at the finish. So that they just changed the rules and said, we're not going to have the sticker, but we need the photos and we want the sponsor to be visible. And so that was an easy solution that solved the problem. They get the photos with the great shots and their logo, and we're not polluting. So it seems like a no-brainer for the CYC to me.
Yeah, I think Rolex is removing bow stickers from their races, as I believe they did that in the 2018 Hobart as well. So I don't think there was any bow stickers in that race, from memory.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's so many different organisations around the world.
Yeah, so Rolex had removed their bow stickers, but I do know that the 52 Super Series was working with a provider, and it might have been 3M, but I can't remember when I read the story. But it was basically the development of a bow sticker for working with the Super Series that actually had a very, very short lifespan once it was sort of in water. So if it did fall off, then it dissolved actually pretty quickly within, I think it was a couple of days or something. So there are, obviously steps being taken to minimise any damage to marine life and waterways with bow stickers.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up. So look, to Ali and Jade and Will, thank you very much. To you, Ali, thank you, and good luck with your sailing endeavours and your clean-up endeavours. Jade, to you, very best of luck for the Hobart race, the two-handed. Keep Barney in that gym. I want to see him when he gets to Sydney what he looks like. It'll be a revelation to a lot that Barney's in the gym working hard, but you've got a great man there, and I'm sure you'll have a great trip to Hobart. And Will, let's see if you can bring it home again. You've got a wonderful boat and a wonderful crew and a wonderful owner in Ichiban. So, to the
I'll be watching Jade pretty closely. The double-handed stuff is a real threat for sure. In the Fastnet, they've taken out the overall win a number of occasions in IRC, particularly some of these new boats that are coming on the market that Jade will be well aware of. Are highly competitive.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Will, Jade, and Ali. It's been terrific. Really, really informative. So good sailing, and stay safe to all our viewers on these tricky times with COVID. Seems to be hopefully getting towards the end, although it's reared its head again a bit down in Victoria. But anyway, stay safe, and thanks again, and good evening. And back to you, Hamish. Thank you.